When I was 5 months pregnant, I was diagnosed with cancer, and Ken was still taking care of his crush. He said, "Coco saved my life. I can't just sit by and do nothing for her. You would understand, right?" In the end, I died. He regretted deeply and knelt next to my body, saying he was sorry. When I was 5 months pregnant, I received the results of my test, late-stage uterine cancer. The doctor's advice was to immediately terminate the pregnancy, then remove my uterus and undergo further chemotherapy. I tried hard to control my collapsing emotions, listening to the doctor's instructions with blurry eyes, unable to believe it, unwilling to believe it. Ken suddenly called me. "I have something to do tonight, don't wait up for me. You're pregnant, remember to rest early." I remained silent. I knew today was the day his white moonlight Coco returned to her home country. "Joy. I'm feeling a bit unwell, can I not go? I'll try to come back early." His voice was gentle, but he didn't ask me what was wrong, and his tone was firm. "Ken. I'm driving, I'll hang up first." He wouldn't give me too many explanations, he just had the final say in our relationship, just like our marriage. We were childhood sweethearts. I had liked him for many years, but he had a crush in his heart. I confessed countless times from childhood to adulthood, and was rejected countless times. Until his white moonlight married someone else, he finally gave up and married me. After we got married, I tried my best to play the role of a good wife, doing everything to please him. In 3 years, I could feel his heart slowly opening up to me, especially when I got pregnant. He started showing me care, preparing gifts on my birthday and important holidays. Our relationship gradually improved, becoming sweeter. But fate played a huge joke on me at this moment. I had cancer, and the child I had longed for had to be aborted. The husband I loved with all my life was now cheating on his pregnant wife to be with his crush. Late at night, I was awakened by a nightmare. In the dream, I was lying on a cold operating table, the doctor was removing the baby from my stomach covered in blood, and at that moment, I seemed to hear the baby crying in distress. I was sweating profusely, the surroundings were still empty and cold. His coming back early was just an excuse. I tried to calm myself down, then took out my phone, opened a chat to distract myself. At 11 p.m., Coco posted on social media. "The best in hometown after so many years." She was taking a selfie, fingers intertwined in the background, even though one hand was barely visible. I could still recognize it instantly. Because there was a tufted white spot on her index finger, just like Ken's. At 2 a.m., Ken came back. He moved quietly, afraid of waking me up. When he went to take a shower, I deliberately turned away. "Sorry, did I wake you up?" He apologized, his voice still gentle. "Is Coco back?" I asked. Ken's voice grew heavy, and the next moment he just said, "It's late, go to sleep first. Can you not see her in the future?" Ken seemed taken aback, then with a slightly annoyed tone, he asked, "What are you worried about? You should know better. Stop making a fuss, it's all in the past between me and her. 10 fingers intertwined counts as the past. It was just a game. Giselle, don't blow things out of proportion at this late hour. How ironic. I'll sleep on the sofa tonight." Ken slammed the door heavily. It was the first time he had lost his temper at me since I got pregnant, because of Coco, because he was embarrassed. After that brief argument, Ken and I continued our days as usual. He was busy. Always busy. I went to every prenatal checkup by myself. So, when I was diagnosed with uterine tumors at my 4-month checkup, he had no idea. I was used to considering him, not wanting him to worry, so I kept it from him until the end, feeling like a joke in the end. Today I went to the hospital again. I asked the doctor, "Can I not have an abortion?" "No." "Can I wait until after the baby is born for surgery?" "Your body cannot wait that long." "How long can I wait?" 1 or 2 months, but it's best to do it now. I can't bear to lose the child I can have in my lifetime. I want to spend more time with him, even just 1 more day. I still wanted to wait, Ken. Leaving the hospital, I called Ken, "Can you get off work on time today?" "What's wrong?" he asked. "It's been a long time since we had dinner together." "Okay." He agreed. This meant our brief Cold War was over, and Ken came home on time. I cooked Ken's favorite food, we ate dinner quietly. Ken's phone suddenly rang, interrupting what I wanted to say. He got up, took a look, then went out to the balcony to take the call. 5 minutes later, he came back, eating noticeably faster, and said, "I have something to attend to." "Is it Giselle?" "No." Ken's tone was serious. "Stop being suspicious, can you? I wish you'd spend more time with me and the baby. If you're bored during pregnancy, you can have your parents come over to stay together, or you can go to their place. They can take care of you. I'm busy with work. I feel at ease when you're with them and not alone." I smiled sadly and silently as he walked towards the door without even looking at me, saying he would make time to take me over. He quickly put on his shoes, briskly walked away without another word. I actually saw it just now. When the phone rang, on his screen that he hurriedly tried to hide, it was Coco's name. Only Coco could make Ken go against his own nature and lie for her. What I didn't say just now was, "Ken, can you accompany me for another 2 months, just 2 months? After that, I won't ask for more." That night, Ken came back before 10 o'clock. After he showered, he lay down on the bed next to me and then pulled me into his arms while pretending to be asleep. He smelled fresh after showering, his body was warm, pressed tightly against my back, but my heart suddenly felt dirty and cold. The next day, we had breakfast together. He complimented me by saying, "The porridge you made is still so delicious." I was born into a good family, and Ken also came from a good background. Our marriage could be considered a match made in heaven. But for him, I became more and more humble. I, who had never cooked before, learned various cuisines for him. Despite him being so picky, I managed to cure his dislike for vegetables. "Can you make me an extra bowl of porridge, and I'll take it to work for lunch?" Ken said casually. "Porridge for lunch? My stomach hasn't been feeling well these days, so drinking porridge will be comforting," he explained lightly. Every day, I made porridge for Ken and packed it for him to take to work. Ken also became more attentive to me these days, coming home from work on time every day. I didn't know if he truly let go of Giselle, or if moral constraints forced him to return to me. In the last few days, I chose to let bygones be bygones. But just as I wanted to open up to him again, I caught him in his office, looking warmly at Giselle as she ate the nutritious porridge I had painstakingly made for him. I glanced at my 5-month pregnant belly, remembering waking up at 5 a.m. every morning, thinking about my repeated compromises for him, and suddenly found it all rather amusing. Couldn't help but burst into laughter. Seeing me like this, Ken's eyes showed signs of panic. He walked towards me, trying to explain, but nothing came out of his mouth. To my surprise, it was Coco who took the initiative to greet me warmly, saying she wanted to thank me for making the nutritious porridge for her every day. She mentioned how her stomach felt much better after a few days, unlike the night when she was in pain and crying. It turned out that Ken rushed to her side that night because Giselle had a stomachache. And Ken's sudden closeness to me was just out of his guilty conscience. Among the three of us, I was the outsider. Did I say something wrong? Coco asked cautiously, seeing my changing expression with teary eyes. She had a vulnerable and innocent look, naturally evoking a protective instinct in people. Her life had not been very lucky. When Ken and I met Coco in the 8th grade, she was a transfer student coming to our class. At that time, she was timid, insecure, and always bore bruises and marks on her body, later revealed to be from being regularly beaten by her alcoholic father. Later, she was bullied in school. Ken saved her and fell in love with her. Suddenly, I became the third wheel. But in the end, Coco married someone else and went abroad. She said she wanted to distance herself from her original family as much as possible. Sorry, she apologized to me, always trying to please and be submissive. I didn't want to play along with Coco anymore. I was tired. Especially since back then, I had never won once. I walked straight into the office, picked up the half-eaten nutritious porridge, and poured it on Giselle's head. Coco screamed, her face drained of color. "Giselle, what are you doing?" Ken roared, rudely pushing me aside. He probably forgot that I was 5 months pregnant. Or maybe he didn't forget, but just didn't care, his mind filled with thoughts of Giselle. I leaned against the wall, enduring the pain in my abdomen, and watched Ken tenderly take care of Giselle. My heart gradually turned from deep love to cold fragments. I walked past them indifferently. I heard Giselle crying, constantly muttering, "Ken, don't mind me. Giselle is pregnant, go check on her, I'm really fine." But she kept holding onto Ken's clothes. My tolerance and kindness towards them finally shattered. I thought it would just be 2 months, and they would end up together. But now I regret it. I want Ken to regret it for the rest of his life. I want this pair of scum man and despicable woman to get their due. I went to the hospital. Ken's push didn't cause me much harm, but the doctor advised me to have surgery soon. When I returned home, Ken was sitting on the couch. There was a bouquet of flowers on the coffee table, along with a lava cake that I liked. He saw me, got up, and walked over with the flowers. Giselle, I sincerely apologize for today's incident. I wanted to explain that this porridge was for Coco, but I was afraid of misunderstanding. I smiled. It was truly calm at that moment. Suddenly, I couldn't recall the uncontrollable joy I felt every time I received a small gift from him before. But I still accepted it and said, "It's lovely. I also bought your favorite cake." He placed the cake in front of me. After taking a bite, I found it too sweet. After becoming pregnant, I rarely ate sweets. Ken thought I had forgiven him. In his eyes, as long as he treated me a little better, I might even be grateful. "Since you left today, Coco cried a lot, saying that you were angry." Now Ken spoke unabashedly. I continued eating the cake, not displaying any emotion. "You know, she's always been sensitive about her original family, especially afraid of offending people," he said. I remained silent. "I'm worried she'll have this knot in her heart, because of your anger today. Can't you just give Coco a call and say it's okay?" Ken said nonchalantly. When he noticed my unusual mood, he hurriedly explained and assured me, "Giselle, this has nothing to do with Coco. It's my fault, and I will do better in the future." I saw a hint of nervousness and embarrassment in his eyes. It was unbelievable that I could witness Ken being so low and apologetic. Should I be happy about it? "How will you do better? Never see her again?" I asked calmly. Ken hesitated for a second, then his voice raised a bit. "Giselle, you should understand. Coco once saved my life. How can I just ignore her?" I laughed. When did Coco save his life? Now she's back without any ties, being abused by her ex-husband abroad, in poor health and suffering from mild depression, with no one else but me. "So you think of yourself as a savior?" I mocked. "Giselle, when did you become so assertive?" He countered. "No matter how many times I say it, my feelings for Coco are purely out of care. I don't have any of those dirty thoughts in your mind. And me? Don't I need care? Do I have to ask for it?" I asked calmly. "You're fine, what care do you need? Besides, don't you still have your parents? I told you to go to your parents' house, but you didn't go." I looked at Ken's familiar yet strangely unfamiliar face. "Ken, whose husband are you? Do you even know I'm pregnant? Do you know that the child in my stomach may not make it?" I couldn't hold it in anymore and blurted out everything. Ken's expression shifted from shock to indifference as he looked at me. "Giselle, you're being too selfish. Making up lies, just so I wouldn't have to take care of Coco, and even cursing your own child. What I said is true. Even if it is true, it only means the child is not meant to be with us. Even if I stay by your side, it won't change anything. Cold and heartless, that's Ken." I stared at him. Time and time again, he crossed my bottom line. "Stop looking at me like that. Giselle, I'm trying my best to live peacefully with you. I don't want you to turn this home into chaos." Ken spoke slowly. "In the end, it was your fault for spilling porridge on Coco. Apologizing to her is only fair. Ken, if you keep treating me like this, do you think you'll regret it one day?" I asked him. "Giselle, I've been good enough to you." Ken's eyes were firm, or else I wouldn't be here in this home now. So, Ken's point is, because he still has a sense of responsibility, he will continue to live with me. Otherwise, he would have been with Coco a long time ago. I'll make the call for you. Once you apologize to Coco, we can put this behind us. Let's not mention it again in the future. I'm still your husband, and you're still my wife, our marriage goes on," he said generously. "And if I don't apologize, does that mean our marriage is over?" I asked Ken calmly. Ken's eyes showed anger. "Giselle, are you really pushing me like this? You're not looking for a legitimate reason to be with Coco, to abandon your pregnant wife without guilt, and be with another woman without a care in the world, right? Now that I've given you the chance, shouldn't you be happy? You're really draining all the love between us." Ken's face turned extremely dark. "Ken, aren't you doing the same? Ken gave me a fierce look and slammed the door as he walked out. I watched Ken's ruthless departure, feeling my heart turn to ash. That night, Coco posted another social media update. A photo taken from her living room, capturing the full moon in the sky. There was a faint figure standing on the balcony in the photo, barely visible in the dim light of the night. Coco loved playing these mind games. In the end, I messaged Coco privately, suggesting we meet the next day. She replied almost immediately, saying okay. The next day, we met at a coffee shop. It wasn't the first time we had met privately. I never thought I'd come back, did I? Coco sipped her coffee, looking proud. Indeed, I never thought so. Now that I'm back, you should divorce Ken. Coco said matter-of-factly. Why? Because Ken has always been fond of me. Coco chuckled smugly. That statement left me speechless. I never understood why you chased after Ken. If he truly liked you, would I even be in the picture? You're beautiful, come from a wealthy family, there are plenty of good men out there, what makes Ken so special to you? Coco's face was filled with sarcasm. He's nothing special, then why are you still after him? Because I have no choice. Coco showed no pretense in front of me. In her eyes, I was never her match. A divorced woman without a prestigious background, only Ken didn't mind being with me. I didn't intend to ruin your marriage, but Ken always came running whenever I beckoned. Have you ever liked Ken? I asked her. Would I have liked him just to marry someone else? All those plans of leaving the country, going abroad, were just for the wealth that man had over Ken. Coco said frankly, you knew that back when we were in school, didn't you? Yes, I knew. But to protect Ken's self-esteem, I had kept it hidden from him. It was all so amusing now. Too bad Ken couldn't see who truly cared for him. But thankfully, this time I was determined to be with him. So, Giselle, let go, you can't compete with me. Coco was confident that whenever she wanted Ken, she could have him. But she didn't know, people change, especially when faced with their mortality. Is that so? I looked coldly at her smug face. Have you forgotten, I'm pregnant? Coco's expression changed instantly. Leave aside the legal implications of divorcing during pregnancy. Do you really think Ken would brave societal judgment, abandoning me to be with you? Coco's expression turned cold. Or do you think, once I have the baby, Ken would leave his wife for you? I continued to mock, Coco, I don't deny Ken's feelings for you, but this time, you're a little too late. Coco gritted her teeth, rendered speechless. The check, please. I called the waiter. After paying the bill, I said to Coco, I've got your share covered, consider it compensation for not being able to satisfy Ken during my pregnancy, and letting you reap the rewards. With those words, I left gracefully in the face of Coco's fury. Once out of her sight, I took a deep breath. I wasn't as composed as I appeared. Trembling, I took out a recording device from my bag. But this wasn't enough. I needed more, so much more. I was going to make Ken suffer like never before. When I got home, I called my best friend Joy. We were classmates in junior high school. She witnessed the drama of our love affair, and always advised me to let go of Ken, saying he wasn't worth it. But I was crazy about Ken, despite having been surrounded by other, better men my whole life. After years of unrequited love, I finally gave up. It's your birthday soon, right? I asked Joy over the phone. You remembered me? Joy replied, sounding a bit resentful. I thought you forgot about me once you got involved with that jerk Ken. Joy, a strong woman who was always busy and single, couldn't understand why I would give up so much of myself for Ken. I need a favor from you, I told her, explaining the situation. Joy couldn't believe it. Are you kidding me? You still think Coco isn't annoying enough? You want me to invite her to my birthday party? I thanked her and promised it wouldn't happen again. On Joy's birthday, I showed up, pregnant. Coco was there too, along with many other classmates, who were teasing about Joy inviting so many old classmates, when she's usually so busy. Joy graciously explained that she wanted to gather everyone since she couldn't make it to the class reunion, and encouraged everyone to enjoy themselves. It was a harmonious atmosphere, until one classmate noticed Ken wasn't there and asked me why I was alone and heavily pregnant. Ken couldn't make it today. But it's fine, we're all old classmates. Nothing to worry about, I replied with a smile. Ken showed up before dinner, surprising everyone except for me. As he sat down next to me, he coldly asked why I hadn't told him about Joy's birthday. I sarcastically quipped back, but he remained silent for the rest of the night, even as his classmates urged him to drink and chat. During a brief bathroom break, I overheard Coco plotting something with a threatening tone about Ken. Upon exiting, a sudden push from behind sent me crashing to the floor, leading to a painful injury and a trickle of blood. Coco's panicked scream echoed through the bathroom, drawing a crowd, including Ken. He immediately knelt down beside me as others called for an ambulance. Ignoring Coco's frantic apologies, I was taken to the hospital with Ken by my side. As we waited for medical help, Joy scolded Ken for not being there earlier. The situation was tense as doctors examined me, with Ken anxiously inquiring about the baby's well-being. Despite the uncertain prognosis, Ken remained silent, his concern evident. Joy was distraught, questioning my carelessness, while Coco continued to apologize profusely by my side. Finally, as the ambulance rushed us to the hospital, the severity of the situation set in, leaving everyone on edge and filled with remorse. I couldn't even speak from the pain. But at that moment, I still glanced at Ken. Joy couldn't stand my lovesick look, but she still fulfilled my wish. Ken, Giselle is calling you. Ken hurried over to me and looked at me. Perhaps he was shocked by my bleeding appearance. His concern and nervousness at the moment seemed genuine. Don't worry, I'm here, everything will be okay. Ken, do you still want this child? I asked him, struggling to get the words out. Ken was momentarily stunned. It turns out he really hesitated. When we first found out about the pregnancy, I clearly saw the joy in his eyes. After all, we were at the age where we should have children. But now, he hesitated. Don't think too much, everything will be fine. Ken didn't give a direct answer, just trying to comfort me. Without this child, you can peacefully be with Coco, Joy interrupted me. Stop thinking about random things. Keep quiet and rest well. You'll have to go to the operating room soon. My gaze still on Ken. Ken had to appease me. I married you, so I will take responsibility for you. Don't speak now, rest well. But when the ambulance arrived at the hospital, Ken turned to leave. Ken, can't you be a human being? I heard Joy unable to contain her roar. At that moment, I was just being carried off the ambulance. Doctors and nurses were pushing me towards the emergency room. Ken, however, turned and walked in the opposite direction. I'll be back in a moment. I called Giselle's parents. They are on their way to the hospital now, Ken said in a hurry. Where are you going? Your wife is in this condition, where else do you want to go? Joy grabbed Ken, not letting him go. I found it a bit funny on the side, as I laughed, tears streamed down. Not from sadness. Just pain. The abdominal pain was so intense, for the first time, I had an urge to die. Just then, Leo called and said Coco was emotionally unstable because of Giselle's fall, blaming herself incessantly, wandering on the road and almost being hit by cars several times. I need to go pick her up and settle her at home. After sorting her out, I'll come right back, Ken explained. No way. Joy screamed. What does Coco have to do with you? It's Giselle who is your wife, you must stay by her side now. Joy, that's between us, you don't need to intervene. Ken was evidently also getting angry, raising his voice towards Joy. Do you really think that woman Coco is any good? She deliberately seduced you back then, all that bullying in school, it was all her acting, Joy said. Enough. I don't need you to tell me what kind of person Coco is. Ken didn't listen to Joy. You can go if you want. Joy probably didn't want to waste time on Ken either. As long as Giselle agrees for you to go, I'll let you. Ken gritted his teeth, rushed to my side, and grabbed my hand. I looked at him, seeing his eyes turning red with urgency. At that moment, I just wanted to pull my hand away from his palm. I don't know why, but at that moment, I suddenly felt very dirty. Giselle, I'll be back in a jiffy. Your parents will be here soon, you'll be fine, Ken said urgently. How do you know I'll be fine? I'm enduring the pain in my body and asking him with difficulty. And Coco will definitely run into trouble. You're in the hospital now, with so many doctors around, you'll definitely be fine. But Coco has only me, Ken replied. Only you? I whispered. But Ken, do you know? The place with the most deaths in this world is in the hospital, I said softly. You won't, it's just a small operation. Even if the child is lost, it doesn't matter. What if I don't want you to go? Giselle, can you be more tolerant? I've told you before, Coco saved my life. I can't just stand by and watch. If she has an accident, I'll never be at peace. Ken began to get impatient. He had no more patience for me, even as I was being rushed to the emergency. If I die, will you be at peace? Don't force me like this. Ken was irritable and firm. Whatever the outcome today, I have to go see Coco first. Since you've made a decision, what else can I say? Ken, just don't regret it. Never regret it. Ken didn't stop to linger, he even ran off. So impatient. Ken left, and left quickly. Joy's eyes turned red with anger. She looked at me, feeling both angry and heartbroken. Why did you let him go like that? Look at you. The heart that can't be held, what's the point of keeping it? Joy was always the kind of person who wouldn't let me be okay if I didn't let her be okay. He won't be okay, I said lightly. But if I keep him here now, and if there is even a tiny mistake with Coco, Ken would hate me. Likewise, the same. Medical staff pushed me to the door of the operating room. Joy held my hand, repeatedly saying, "Don't be afraid, I'll be outside waiting for you. There are plenty of men in this world. That dog of a man, Ken, really isn't worth it." Joy, I have something to give you. I struggled to take out a USB drive from my pocket. What's this? Just keep it. I didn't say anything else. But handing it over to Joy, I felt relieved. Joy held the USB tightly in her hand, looking at me with red eyes. I was pushed into the operating room, calmly looking up at the bright surgical light above me, as if a sudden premonition struck me. A premonition that I didn't have much time left. In fact, when they confirmed late-stage uterine cancer, I asked the doctor, if I have an abortion, remove my uterus, undergo chemotherapy, can I live a long time? The answer was a no. The doctor said it depended on the individual. Some people could live a few more years and some, perhaps, would die on the operating table. I was the latter. In a daze, I heard the doctor's nervous voice, presumably performing emergency procedures on me. But I couldn't feel the presence of the outside world anymore. The moment I completely lost consciousness, I thought, if Ken knew I would really die here, would he regret it? Ken's epilogue. Giselle accidentally fell while pregnant. I took her to the hospital, but got a call from a classmate saying Coco was emotionally unstable. Coco had a tough upbringing, which made her introverted, shy, sensitive, and suspicious. Unlike Giselle, who came from a wealthy and harmonious family, she would never have suicidal thoughts. I never thought I should spend more time with her as Coco needed me more. But I never expected death could touch our world. I never imagined Giselle would actually die during that surgery. I was with Coco, comforting her through her outburst when her emotions spiraled out of control. She cried all night, and I almost forgot Giselle was in the emergency room until I received a call from Joy. On the phone, Joy's voice croaked as she said, "Ken, congratulations, the child didn't make it." My heart suddenly ached. I had thought that the child might not survive when Giselle bled so much at the hospital, it was impossible to save them. I wasn't sure if I wanted the child or not. Deep down, I knew if the child didn't make it, I would have the confidence to divorce Giselle and be with Coco. Though Coco never said it, I could sense that she wanted us to get back together. So, when Giselle asked me if I still wanted the child in the ambulance, I didn't give a clear answer. Now that it's truly gone, my heart feels empty. Am I happy? Now, can I be with Coco without guilt? Joy's voice held a clear hint of sarcasm. It's not because I didn't want it, I lashed back weakly. Joy, I know you're Giselle's good friend, but our matters are between us as a couple. Outsiders shouldn't meddle. I replied, trying not to sound defeated. A couple. Joy sneered. In that mocking tone, I sensed a tinge of sorrow. I really didn't understand what Giselle saw in you, Ken. Do you really deserve her? Joy, there's no need for your judgment on Giselle and me. The child is gone, I know how to console her. That's enough, I responded, not willing to show weakness. Giselle no longer needs you, Joy added abruptly. Joy. I snapped, suddenly angry. Who did she think she was to dictate me and Giselle's relationship? Giselle was gone. I was stunned. For a moment, I thought I had misheard. It felt as if lightning had struck on a clear day. Ken, you're free now, Joy said before hanging up. I stood there with the phone, frozen. The feelings were indescribable, a piercing pain that spread through my entire body like 1,000 needles. How could Giselle be gone? Medicine was so advanced these days. It was just a miscarriage, right? Ken, what's wrong with you? Coco walked to the balcony, concern in her eyes, asking, what's the matter? Are you crying? Has something happened? Was I crying? In that moment, I realized tears were streaming down my face. I turned to leave. Ken, where are you going? Coco hugged me, saying, didn't we agree to spend tonight together? I'll be scared if you leave. Please don't go. I felt a strange protective urge for Coco. She could make me forget everything and treat her well. But right now, I just felt annoyed and smothered by her. Pushing her away, I said, Giselle is dead. Coco froze, unable to believe, just like me. I left Coco's home in long strides, heading to the hospital. Along the way, I considered that Joy might have been purposely trying to provoke me since she was Giselle's closest friend and I hadn't treated Giselle well. It wasn't until I saw Giselle's lifeless body that the reality hit me. She lay on the hospital bed, her face ghostly pale. Next to her lay a fetus, lifeless though fully formed. The sudden overwhelming grief made me feel like I couldn't cope. How could she have died? How could Giselle be gone? I approached to touch her, but Giselle's father swung a punch at my face. Yet, in that moment, I felt no pain. The grief was immense, unimaginable, and it made me almost numb to everything else. Giselle's father kept berating me, saying I had a heart of a wolf and I owed her. Yes, I owed Giselle. If only she could wake up and let me make it up to her. I knelt heavily on the ground. I had never thought Giselle's death would affect me so profoundly, making me feel as if the sky had fallen. I knew I didn't love her. I always believed I loved Coco, who had saved my life. We had an understanding, and being with Giselle was a compromise. But now that she was gone, why did I feel such pain and turmoil? Why was it so unbearable? I knelt there, overwhelmed by sorrow and guilt, feeling consumed by it. I had no idea how long I knelt at the hospital. Giselle's parents took her and the fetus away, not letting me follow, saying I wasn't worthy, that I would taint her path to the afterlife. Coco appeared by my side at some point, holding me as she wept. She said she couldn't bear to see me torture myself, assuring me that Giselle's death had nothing to do with me. Giselle's death was just an accident, not my fault. Even if I had stayed at the hospital, Giselle still would have died. But why did I feel so guilty and breathless, as if crimes weighed upon me? Coco pulled me up from the ground. Ken, don't torment yourself, the deceased is gone. Let's move on together. Coco urged me. Scum and a wretch, future plans to be good. Joy's voice cut through. Coco turned to face Joy, pleading, Joy, Ken is in so much pain. Can you please stop? Even if I am sorry for Giselle, please spare Ken. All right, for you, I'll go at you, Joy agreed bluntly. Then the quiet corridor erupted into Coco and Giselle's recorded conversation. My body visibly trembled. When I heard Giselle's voice, my whole being shook. I turned to Joy. The voices played from her phone. Giselle wasn't alive. As I listened to Giselle and Coco's exchange, initially buried feelings rose to the surface. Coco grew more frantic, yelling at Joy, what are you playing? Turn it off. Turn it off. Frightened now? Joy chuckled. Didn't you say you were ready for it? Turn it off, it's not real. You better turn it off right now. Coco tried to grab Joy's phone. The two tangled in a struggle. Ken, if you want to know the truth, you better get this wench off me. Joy cursed loudly at me. I rose from the ground, roughly pulling Coco away. Let me go, Ken. Let me go. It's not real, it's not real. Coco was agitated, her face flushed and contorted. This is a Coco I've never seen before. I always thought she was delicate, like a breeze could knock her over. Turns out, you're scared of what? Joy challenged Coco. I don't want Ken to misunderstand me. Stop trying to sow discord between me and Ken here. Shut up. Shut up. Coco screamed. Joy coldly ignored Coco, who seemed to be losing her mind. She looked at me and said, listen clearly to what Coco is about to say. My throat rolled, uncontrollably. I heard clearly the voice from Joy's phone. Would I still like him if I can marry another man? All that talk about leaving my family and going abroad, it's all a lie, just because that man is richer than Ken. You've known it all along, back when we were in school, didn't you? Too bad Ken is blind, he can't tell who really cares about him. Thankfully, this time I'm determined to be with him. So, Giselle, let go, you can't compete. The voice ended. The hallway suddenly fell eerily quiet. My appearance must have been terrifying. I looked at Coco, my eyes bloodshot. No, it's not like that, Ken, believe me, this is not my true feelings. I deliberately said those things to upset Giselle. She's been pining over you, that's why I said those words. I slapped Coco hard across the face. She was thrown to the ground by the force of my blow, looking at me in disbelief, tears in her eyes, looking pathetic. I used to never see Coco wronged in the slightest, would never let her shed a tear, but in that moment, I suddenly felt repulsed, utterly disgusted. Can't handle it. Joy looked at us as if watching a comedy. There's even more explosive stuff, want to see. I clenched my fists, not wanting to, even scared to, but forced myself to nod, forced myself to uncover those cruel truths, bloodily tear them open. See for yourself. Joy handed me the phone. I watched the video on the phone and played it. In the footage, Giselle and Coco were in the bathroom, just before Giselle's incident tonight. As I watched Giselle's lively expression, seeing her alive, everything became blurry. Suddenly, in the video, Coco forcefully pushed Giselle, who was walking ahead, pregnant and defenseless, down to the ground. I saw Coco's sinister smile, even as she let out a frightened scream right after. I laughed. Tears streamed down my face, going crazy. Coco seemed shocked by my appearance, stood up, saw the video in my hand, her face turning pale, kept saying, "No, it's not true, Ken, listen to my explanation, no, it's Giselle, Giselle set me up. How else would there be this video, it must be her design." What? So you got caught red-handed doing something bad, now it's someone else's fault. Coco, are you really shameless? Joy gritted her teeth. Ken, believe me. I pushed Coco away. She made me sick to my stomach. I've sent everything to you, whether you want to report it to the police, it's up to you. After all, Ken never thought of letting you know all the truth. If I hadn't found this evidence on her, she would probably have hidden it from you for a lifetime. I clenched my fists, heartache to the extreme, pain shattering. Let me tell you 3 things. First, at the school picnic, you accidentally fell into the river rapids. It was Giselle who risked everything to save you and bring you to the shore. When you woke up, you wrongly assumed it was Coco. If you don't believe me, you can ask the classmates who were there that day, they all saw it. But how could you bring yourself to ask? In your heart, the one who risked their life to save you, could only be Coco. Second, Coco deliberately attracted your attention, when she was bullied at school. You probably didn't know, the person bullying Coco was her best friend, whom she is still in close contact with now. If you don't believe me, check her phone, look at her chat history, you'll see. Third, Giselle was diagnosed with late-stage uterine cancer a month ago. Afraid of worrying you, she kept it from you all this time. The doctor advised her to undergo an abortion for treatment, but because she had to have her uterus removed and could no longer conceive, she insisted on wanting to have a child for you, even at the cost of her life. But in the end, it was a tragic result, costing 2 lives. Joy stared coldly at me, looking at me like I was a fool. She said, Ken, after living to this age, I've truly never seen anyone as foolish as you. She turned and left. Perhaps she thought that a person like me wasn't worth her time. A fool like me wasn't worth anyone's time. But Giselle, she sacrificed her life for me. I turned to look at Coco, at her completely transformed, grotesque face. I picked up my phone, dialed, "Hello, is this the police station? I want to report a deliberate murder." "No." Coco frantically tried to grab my phone. "Ken, please don't call the police. I beg you not to. I can't go to jail. I can't, Ken. Everything I did was for our future. I love you. Now that Giselle is gone, we can be together as it should be." Coco couldn't say anything. Because I suddenly grabbed her neck. Her whole face turned red to the extreme, her eyes filled with terror. She tried to push me away, but was powerless. Panic and fear were written all over her face. When you schemed against me, when you pushed Giselle down, did you ever feel afraid? Did you ever imagine this day would come? Did you ever think you would face retribution? Coco, the 2 of us should go and accompany Giselle, and the child who never had a chance to be born in their burial. I killed Coco, inch by inch, watching her in my hands, losing her breath completely, giving up struggling. Looking at Coco lying motionless on the ground, I strangely had no fear, no sadness. Only a sense of revenge. Just felt freed. Later, the police arrested me. The charge of intentional murder should warrant death penalty, right? Indeed, I deserve to die. Giselle's epilogue: I didn't die. There was a lot of bleeding on the operating table. I teetered on the edge of death several times, but the doctors managed to bring me back. They saved my life, but I lost half of it. The child, naturally, did not make it. Maybe he wasn't meant to be from the beginning. After coming out of the operating room, I asked my parents, Joy, and the medical staff to help me stage a little drama. I only said I wanted to completely cut ties with Ken, without revealing more details. They were very supportive. That's when the scene of Ken kneeling in front of my corpse happened. Later, my parents accompanied me to the hospital room while Joy left. I knew exactly what she was up to. Joy's personality wouldn't let Ken off that easy. I could even guess she would make Ken feel so guilty and remorseful. It was an unspoken agreement between us, or you could say it was all part of my plan. Just like when I recorded Coco pushing me down. That day when I pretended to be pregnant, I knew Coco would do anything to get rid of the baby in my stomach. The child wasn't meant to be, and I used it to trap Coco. So, I went to the restroom, placed a hidden camera in a corner to capture everything, and waited for the fish to take the bait. Sure enough, Coco acted. I bled heavily and was rushed to the hospital. I even anticipated that Coco would do everything she could to get Ken to leave me. Everything was within my plan. I gave the USB drive to Joy, who would take a look at its contents right away. Apart from the recordings, I also gave Joy a hint. I told her there was a video of Coco framing me in my phone, to be downloaded from the camera app. Joy knew what to do next. Later, I heard that Ken killed Coco and got arrested. I wasn't surprised at all. Given Ken's personality, how could he endure being deceived like that? Coupled with his guilt towards me and the child, he chose this extreme way out. It was somewhat expected, somewhat a form of retaliation. Later on, I transferred to the most prestigious oncology hospital in China for further surgery and chemotherapy. Over the course of a year, the doctors said my condition was under control, advising me to take good care of my health. Living for another 10 or even 8 years, like a normal person, was not impossible. When I returned from the hospital, I heard that Ken had been sentenced. Not to death, but life imprisonment. Life imprisonment might be even more torturous. I didn't go see him. I couldn't pinpoint the exact moment, but perhaps after the life and death experience on the operating table, I truly let go of Ken. This man was completely uprooted from my heart, leaving no trace behind. After all, life is precious. In the remaining days, all I want is to live without any regrets.